I'm Lynn.
And I'm Mark.
And we're glad you joined us today.
Welcome to the Digital Marketing Hotseat podcast,
where small business owners ask us their number one pain point digital marketing question.
And put us in the hot seat.
Hi, I'm Lynn Smargis, and I'm a content writer specializing in ghostwriting, podcast production, and SEO website content.
And I'm Mark Thackeray, and I specialize in social media marketing, specifically Facebook and Instagram ads, email marketing, and email automation.
I'm ready, Mark. Are you ready?
I sure am. Let's do this.
Hey, small business owners. We are so glad you joined us again for another episode of the Digital Marketing Hot Seat podcast, where you get to listen to small business owners putting Mark and me in the hot seat to answer their digital marketing questions. And if you're new, welcome. You can find us on YouTube or you can find us on your favorite podcast player. So, Mark, how is your digital marketing this week? What client work has your attention?
Oh, this week, a number of things, but one in particular that I'll share is we have it's a new client that it needs a number of things they need help on. So one is to relaunch their Facebook and Instagram page. So we're helping them to set that up properly, and so that we can start running some ad campaigns. The second is that they have a second business that it's a nonprofit organization, actually. So they're both business owners. The wife owns a management consulting practice. She's a data analyst, world renowned, actually. And then the husband owns a remodel. He's a general contractor. He owns a remodel business. But together for this nonprofit, they have a home in Kenya, in Africa, and they purchase locally made products over there. So sewn bags, handbags, and bowls and things like that. And all the profits go back to fund the education for kids over there. And so it's called Glitter Trotter, and it's really a neat organization, but they need help though. They've just launched not too long ago. They have a good social following, but they need help driving sales, for these things so that they can really fund this education for these kids. So we're just getting into it. Very excited. Very excited. What about you, Lynn? How's your week going? What project are you focused on this week, would you say?
Well, so this week, one of my big projects that I actually just finished recently, which I absolutely love to do, is book editing. So I had a client, and he wants to become seen as an expert in his field. And one of the best ways to do that is to be author a book. And a lot of people say, well, I have a book in my head, which is great, but unless you publish it, nobody knows about it. Because until we get all chips in our head and we can read each other's minds, which will kind of be a little scary, but you can't just automatically transfer that information to people. So he has an 80,000 word book that I just finished editing, and it's about real estate multifamily investing. So it's a really, really great book, and he's going to be launching it soon. And so I love editing books. So so that's what one of the newer projects, or one of my projects I just recently finished up on, was book editing.
Very cool. Yeah, very cool. That's exciting. Yeah, books they're a great way to differentiate yourself from the competition. I mean, what better way to start a relationship? If someone were to read that book, now they know probably 10 times more than anyone else, and they have that relationship, 10 times better relationship with you because of that. That's a great idea.
Yeah, it's also books are a great way for people to get to know you for like a really inexpensive low dollar amount, like $14, $15, $16.
Yeah.
And it's a great way to promote your business. And if you're a speaker, a book's a no-brainer, because if you're a speaker, a book will get you more speaking gigs and better paying speaking gigs. So if you're looking for a ghostwriter, I do that as well. So hit me up on writeforyou.me.
Awesome. Okay, so Lynn, before we get into today's episode, tell the listeners a little bit about what these Digital Marketing 101 episodes are. We started it last week, but just give us a quick recap.
Yeah. So last week, if you didn't hear our episode 4 was all about what is digital marketing. And we talked about like the three basic components of digital marketing: email, social media, and website. And so the next couple, so today we're going to talk about what is SEO, because that's a really common question Mark and I get in our marketing businesses a lot. And then next week, we're going to talk about unraveling the social media mystery. So like talking about different platforms and which ones you should be on if you are in different verticals, things like that. And we'll talk a little bit about hashtags and things like that. So we're going to be diving into social media. And then our episode 7 is we're going to talk about email. Is email marketing dead? Should you have an email? And then, and those kind of things. So definitely tune in, because we want to do these educational pieces for small business owners, because these are the basic questions we get all the time. And a lot of these are on my FAQ page on my website. And I know that a lot of small business owners, you guys wear 18 hats like we do, because we're both small business owners. And unless you're in the marketing space like we are, it's really hard to keep up with all these things. So we wanted to start off with these basic digital marketing 101 courses and episodes to like just familiarize, so you can familiarize yourself with the basics of digital marketing. So when we jump into our hot seat episodes, you will know and have a basic understanding of the basics of digital marketing.
Yes, absolutely. So let's get into this then, Lynn. What first and foremost, give me your definition of SEO. What does that mean to you?
Yeah. So SEO is an acronym, and it stands for search engine optimization. And so what that means to me is, how well are you showing up on Google? How well are you showing up on Yahoo, on Bing, on other search engines, on DuckDuckGo? It's really, really important to be able to show up if you're looking for customers or clients on the web anymore and nowadays. Whereas I know some people say, oh, well, I get all my business by referral marketing. And that's actually really great. But you also need a digital component so that people, like, for instance, during COVID, I heard a lot of people say that, and then we couldn't talk to each other. And the only way people were finding out about things were from people's websites. So SEO is super important, because if you don't have a website or you don't have good SEO, you're not showing up on the first page or the second page of a search engine, and then people won't be able to find you. So that's what basically SEO is like how easy it is to find you online.
Yeah, exactly. And to your point, I meet with a lot of, and I'm sure get the same thing all the time, Lynn, was you're meeting with small business owners, but a lot of them are proud to say that all their business comes from referral. And I understand where they're coming from, but at the same time, they're putting themselves at risk, to be totally, if I can be so bold, because it's so important to diversify. And that's why we talk about all these different things. We both specialize in different things, but doesn't mean that these other options don't work, and so that's why it's critical to talk about SEO, to understand what that is, to talk about social media, to understand what email marketing is because if you put all your eggs in one basket, then you are at risk if something does change. So if you are solely referral based, well, there's a couple of challenges with that. Is one, you most likely don't have a formalized system for generating those referrals. It's a very passive system, I would guess. Most businesses would answer yes to that. And so you have no control over that. So it means that your predictability is not very sure. You hope that you'll get referrals, but you don't know. Whereas if you have marketing campaigns that are running, whether they're SEO campaigns, whether they're social media campaigns, this can help you be able to have a consistent flow of traffic, of leads, and ultimately of new clients and customers. So it's so important to remember that as we're talking about all of these episodes, but just especially as we're talking about SEO. So why we've talked a little bit about this. You touched on it a little bit, Lynn, but what are some other reasons? Like, why is it so critical? I know showing up on Google and Yahoo and all those, but what does that do for a business when they're able to show up higher in those search engines?
Yeah, well, one of the things to kind of piggyback off what you just said, Mark, is that if you're not doing anything for your SEO and you're not investing on it, you're really leaving money on the table. Because for our small business owners who are listening, Mark and I are both in the same referral business network group. So we get how important referrals are, but you also have to have the SEO, because like if if I move to a new area and I look up restaurants near me, if my restaurant doesn't have good SEO, I'm not going to show up on page one, and that person's not going to be able to find you. Or if you are traveling and you look up restaurants near me, and obviously if someone's traveling, it's probably not going to be a repeat business, but it's going to be that extra little bit of business that you get that you may not have had if you didn't have good SEO. So SEO is kind of like the whipped cream and the cherry on your sundae, right? Like you need the ice cream, the hot fudge, but if you don't have the whipped cream and the cherry and the sprinkles, it's really not as fun. So you need to have good SEO so that you've got the entire sundae, not just the ice cream and the hot fudge.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. Now I'm salivating over here. Thanks, Lynn.
I haven't had lunch yet either, and it's getting really, really dangerously close to lunchtime, which is me just hungry thinking about ice cream.
That's right. Oh, well, that's a good way to put it. And as one of the things that is so attractive to me about SEO is this idea that you can, once you do the work, and it is work, there's no question about it, unless you are one of two other competitors for this particular niche, it's going to be a lot of back end work to start climbing those rankings. But the goal of SEO is to show up so high in those rankings that now you're getting all this organic traffic because Google sees you as the answer to a question, to a query, whether that's a restaurant near me, and people, their whole goal, I think it's important to remember, is to look at what their motivation is. What is Google's motivation to serve up these rankings? Is they want to make the most relevant rankings show up first. And so we'll talk about how you do that, but if you're able to do that, then you reap all those benefits of being high in those rankings, on being on page one. Maybe you're listing 1 or 2 or 3 in the organic rankings, and now you're just getting all those calls, getting all that traffic. And that's the goal. That's really what we're talking about as we dive into SEO. That is the end goal, the end result that we're shooting for. So with that, let's Lynn, why don't you start us off? How on earth do we start doing that? Because it's a process, right? It's not just a hope and pray process that we show up. So what are some things that we can do to increase your SEO?
So one of the things you need to know about SEO before you even start to think about what to do to increase it is it does take time. So one of the things I have people say is, well, how much time does it take to increase my ranking? Well, that depends on how much you work on your SEO and how you're putting these items that we're going to talk about in place on a consistent basis. Because Google not only loves new content, it loves new consistent content, which is one of the reasons why podcast show notes are so great to increase your SEO. Because if you put out a podcast consistently, even if it's every 2 weeks, it doesn't have to be every week or every day or every month. It is still consistent. So the more consistent you put out content on your website, such as a blog post, because blog post is a great way to increase your SEO. If you have a weekly blog, that is a phenomenal way to increase your SEO because you're putting out fresh content every week, or even if it's every 2 weeks blog. And then Google sees that. And then if your blog answers people's questions, I'm sure you have I know, Mark, you've seen this, and I'm sure our small business owners who are listening have seen this, is that when you say hey, what is SEO, or how can I increase my SEO? This episode may have come up for you, or you may have seen someone's blog on how can I increase my SEO. So it's really, really important to have that consistent blog topics. Even if it's every 2 weeks, it doesn't have to be every week. And I always suggest to my clients who I write blog content for is start out small, start out once a month, or start out once every 3 weeks or once every 2 weeks. So it's not super overwhelming for you, because I know a lot of people are like, well, I can't write a blog topic every week. Well, I usually write my blog topics for my clients, and then I give it to them or their web host or whoever manages their website. And then that person will upload it for them. So it's really, really simple and easy way to start increasing your SEO so that over time, over a period of months or years, your ranking will go up.
Yeah. And I want to touch on this too. I think there's a great way to get started for a lot of people, because like you said, when you ask someone to start writing a blog post every week, they get this deer in the headlights look like, oh my, there's no way, I don't even know what to say. But the reality is you answer these questions all the time. I mean, you as a business owner field questions from all sorts of prospective clients, existing clients, referral partners. And that's a great place to start, is your frequently asked questions. If you'll notice, when you do a query or a search on Google, a lot of times there's going to be a little section on there of additional questions. that are related to your initial question. And because a lot of people may have typed something in, but really what they meant was this. And so you could follow that same strategy is just look at the questions that you get asked all the time by people that are just starting to do business with you or people that have been doing business with you for some time, and answer those questions. And that's going to help a lot. And what's so cool about doing this is putting in the time for a blog or for a podcast or for an email campaign is that you can now take that content and repackage and repurpose it. So you could take a blog post and then you could turn it into a video, and maybe you put that in an email so that your emails are more effective, like Lynn was talking about in our last episode. So there's so much to this, but really don't overthink it. That's my point on this, is that you have a lot of the information already. Just start answering those questions, even type it out. Some people prefer to speak and record it and have it transcribed because it's easier for them to do. You can just have someone ask you the questions and then just transcribe your response. So that's a great way to get started.
Yeah. And that's actually a really great point, is that the questions people are asking you the most are the questions that people are going to find you with for your blog. So that's a great place to start for website blogs. And so another thing you can use to increase your SEO is to have a podcast with well-written show notes. Now I know podcasting is not for everyone, but if you do have a podcast with well-written show notes, so I've seen people, because I write over 300 episodes of show notes a year for clients. So I've seen people just put like 4-sentence summary. And it's like, okay, well, that's okay, but it's not helping other people find your podcast, because Apple's searching for it at that point. All the podcast players are searching for keywords people are typing in. So like for my one podcast, Travel Gluten Free, I have gluten-free all over everything, because anybody that's looking for a gluten-free podcast will find my podcast, and it ranks very high on Google. Like I think the first or second podcast, if you just type in gluten-free podcasts on Google search. So it's really a great way to get that fresh new content every week that Google loves and will put you a higher rank for.
Yeah. That's such a great point. Another thing that I was, is really just understanding again what Google is looking for. And what I mean by this is that it wants to serve up the most relevant responses to a search or to a query, and one of the ways that they look at that or evaluate if it is a good response is how many other people are referring to that website. So if there's other sites that are using you as a reference or with a link to your website, then that is a key thing that Google will look at as well, as just are you a link worthy website? Do you have a lot of information? Like Lynn was saying, are you using those frequently asked questions to build out content that people can come and receive answers, discover answers to their questions? They love to see that. And then other people do too. And they're going to have other sites that will link to you. So let's say you're a dentist. I work with a lot of dentists, so this is a good one. But let's say you're a dentist and you have some great information on dental implants, for example. Now, anyone who is looking for that, or maybe services that same audience that might have questions on that, it could be maybe a senior care facility where they have a lot of their clients have maybe challenges with their teeth or whatever the case may be, and they could be a referral partner, but they could send their clients to that website to gather more information. And that's what's so cool is as you build out a well-rounded website that answers these questions, more people are going to link to it because it's such a good resource, and that's going to up your SEO as well.
Yeah, and another thing I noticed on a lot of people's websites, because I'm writing content for websites on a monthly basis, is that people don't have keywords in their headers, which is so super important, because Google searches your headers for answers to people's questions. And so if you have like an about page and it says why you want to, use us, well, that's not searchable by Google because nobody's searching that. But if you have an about page that says why you want to use our construction business in Park City, Utah, that is searchable. So you want to make sure you have those keywords in your headers to make your content searchable. And you also want to make sure you have at least 300 words per page on your website, because if you don't, your website page will not be searchable.
And one caveat to that too, that we'll mention, is that in the past, some people have taken that advice and they've stuffed keywords into everything that they can. And so it reads really weird, so it's construction company in Park City, Utah that does remodels. It's like a huge long header with all these keywords that are stuffed into it. And you don't want to overdo it. but you definitely want to have do it tactfully where you have those keywords mentioned in there, because like Lynn said, those are weighted differently than just the body copy. And so there's a lot of little nuances too. We're not even touching a lot of that, the technical side. There's tags, there's, all the headers like you were describing, but there's a lot of things, just naming of images and things like that you can really technical steps that you can take. But these are kind of the bigger ones that we've mentioned that really help you start making progress with your SEO.
Yeah. And another thing as well, one other component that you really want for your SEO is to make sure the settings on your website are updated. So a lot of people, unless you have and ask your web person, if you have somebody doing your web, ask them, are my SEO search engine optimization settings updated? Do I have the latest plugin on WordPress for SEO? Do I have the right plugins on WordPress for SEO? If you're not using WordPress, you have a SEO settings tab somewhere in your website builder. Make sure you go in there and put in your keywords so that people are finding your thing, and make sure you have SEO titles on all your blogs, because all of those settings are super important for when people search on Google or another search engine for people to be able to find you. So make sure your settings are always updated. I guess I'm thinking I feel like every 3 to 6 months is really important. I know people probably don't do it that often, but you really need to keep up with what the current trends are and what people are searching for.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's a great overview of what SEO is, why it's important, and some steps that you can start taking right now to increase your ranking on those search engines. So, Lynn, would you add anything else to that?
I would say just making sure that you are consistently posting the content is just so important, and having great content on your website. But yeah, all these things we mentioned, Mark, are just the very first basic steps you want to take to increase your ranking. So more people will see you, because the more people will see you, you'll connect with more people, and the more people you connect with, the more people that will buy, and the more people that will buy, the more money you make.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the name of the game. And well, it's really about serving other people too. I mean, that's what a lot of times we'll talk with business owners that might be a little reluctant. They don't, but when I help them understand that you do a great job, and you can tell that they're very passionate about it, but they might not be passionate about sales, for example. They might feel a little slimy or whatever. But once they realize the value that they bring into people's lives, that's so key, and this is why marketing is so important, is because now you can reach more people so that you can provide that service to them that you're uniquely qualified for. And I think once people see that in that light, in that mentality, it makes it a lot easier to communicate that. It makes it, they feel less hesitant to ask for the sale, And do you ever get that, Lynn? I know this is kind of an aside, but do you ever run into that as well?
Oh yeah, all the time. I actually have a Google review from one of my travel clients pre-COVID, who said I was doing his blog post and his podcast show notes every week, and he literally said he used to spend his entire Monday doing podcasts and show notes because he wasn't very good at writing. But he's like, now that's completely off my plate. My wife's like, I'm so much happier on Mondays. He's like, Lynn does all this for me. It's amazing. It's wonderful. I don't have to worry about it anymore. So I know for me, I love when I can hand something off to somebody and be like, can you take care of this? And they do it, and it's done. And then I can work on my business, and I don't have to think about that. Even for stuff like around my house, my personal stuff. Like I have a house cleaner come every month. Could I clean my own house? Sure. But do I want to? No. And it also frees up my weekend. So I'm not spending my weekend cleaning my house. I'm spending my weekend enjoying myself or doing other things I want to do. So think about from your perspective, right? Who do you hire to take stressful and crazy things off of other people's plate or off of your plate that you don't want to do? You're doing that same service for somebody else. You're making their life better and more stress-free, and giving them time availability for them to work on their business and grow their business. And that's a really important key when you have your own small business, for sure.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better. Okay, guys, in our next episode, we will dive into social media, unravel the social media mystery. We're going to talk about what platforms you want to be on, depending on your industry or your vertical, and why ads are such an integral part of your social media marketing. So if you have make sure you stay tuned. But also, if you have questions, we'd love to hear from you. Just go to our website. There will be a form on there that you can fill out, and stay tuned. Stay tuned.
See y'all next week.
We're so glad you joined us on today's episode.
Tune in each week for a new digital marketing hot seat question from a small business owner just like you.
And if you're interested in being a guest on our podcast, go to digitalmarketinghotseat.com and fill out our interview form.
And remember, make sure to like and subscribe to the Digital Marketing Hot Seat podcast on your favorite podcast player.